I found my wife's diary saying she felt nothing for me. I stayed silent, tracked her affair, secured my assets, filed for divorce, and walked away free. The diary was just sitting there, left open like it wanted to be found, tucked behind a stack of overdue mail, half hidden beneath a grocery flyer. Tom wasn't looking for trouble. He was looking for checks. But what he found was a sentence that didn't read like a sentence. It read like a bullet. I don't feel anything for him. Not hate, not love, just nothing. Not anger, not even disappointment. Just that empty-sided detachment written in Jenna's perfect, looping script, the same handwriting she used on anniversary cards. Except this time, the recipient wasn't getting a heart. He was being erased. Tom sat down on the edge of the bed, the mattress squeaking under his weight like it too was reacting. His thumb ran along the edge of the page. He didn't turn it. He didn't need to. That one sentence was enough. Not a confession, a verdict. There was no date, but he recognized the pen. Blue ink, the same one from the kitchen drawer. Probably written in this house. Probably written while he was outside mowing the lawn, thinking about whether they should replace the water heater before winter. He didn't storm out, didn't confront, didn't even move the diary. He placed it back exactly how it was, then took off his shoes and lay flat on the bed, arms by his side, staring up at the faded ceiling paint they always said they'd fix. That night, he didn't sleep. Not because of rage, not even betrayal. What kept him awake was the sheer precision of it, that she could write that sentence so cleanly, no smudges, no hesitation. He tried to imagine when it had started, when her smile stopped reaching her eyes, when her hand stopped lingering on his shoulder, when "I'm just tired" became the evening script, and then somewhere between 2 a.m. and dawn, Tom realized something. This wasn't new. It wasn't sudden. This was the final stage of a long, silent exit, and he'd missed every kill. And if he missed that, what else had he missed? He got out of bed and made a list. Not names, not suspicions, just questions, small, surgical ones. When did she stop making coffee for 2? When did the joint account get a second debit card? When did she stop calling my name in the dark? He circled the last one 3 times. Then closed the notepad, put on a sweatshirt, and took the trash out like it was any other morning, because for her, it was. She was still asleep when he left the house. She didn't even stir. And before we go further, let me say this. If you're reading this, and you've ever felt that quiet shift under your feet, the kind you can't prove but feel in your teeth, subscribe. Seriously, 98% of you don't. And we're trying to hit our first 10,000 to keep this team going. If you've ever stared at a ceiling like Tom did, wondering when your life stopped being yours, stick around, because this wasn't the end. It was just the first crack in a floorboard that was about to split open. Tom didn't ask her about the diary. He didn't hint, didn't even change his tone. He kissed her cheek the next morning, handed her coffee, and said, "Long day ahead, just like always." But this time, when she answered with that distracted he clocked every beat of it. The way she didn't meet his eyes, how fast she grabbed her phone right after, how she smiled at the screen then turned it face down. That whole week, Tom became a ghost in his own home, present but invisible. And like any good ghost, he watched. He watched her check her phone every 10 minutes, even during dinner. He watched her laugh at messages she wouldn't show him, typing fast, thumbs moving like they had a purpose he didn't deserve to know. She stayed late at work 2 times that week. Once, she came home smelling like citrus and something not quite cologne, but expensive, not his. On Thursday, she said she had a migraine and went to bed early. Tom went out to the garage not to avoid her, but to start inventorying what was his, what he cared about, what he wouldn't leave behind. To her, it was just his little workshop, a dusty kingdom of old screwdrivers and socket wrenches. But to Tom, it was the safest place on earth. So that's where he pulled out the folders. Old tax returns, monthly statements, car titles, life insurance policies, quiet evidence of a life built over 30 years. And now he looked at them like he was surveying a crime scene. He cross-referenced the dates Jenna claimed to be overtime with their phone records. Something didn't add up. She had a burner number, one she didn't store in contacts but kept memorized. It showed up like a tick, the same time every night. Always under 5 minutes, but sometimes 2 times in an hour. Then there were the ATM withdrawals. Small, random, but always in the same part of town near a bar Tom hadn't even realized she knew about. The kind of place that didn't ask questions when someone paid in cash. She never liked cash. She once called it filthy. He started printing things out, no red circles, no highlights, just stacking pages like bricks, building a wall she wouldn't see coming. Tom wasn't trying to catch her in the act. That would have been too easy. He was trying to understand the size of the betrayal, how long it had lived in their home, slept in their bed, shared his toothpaste. One night, as she slept beside him, her back turned like always, he whispered, "You're not the one I married." Just to himself, just to test the sound of it. She didn't move. The next morning she asked if he'd moved her charger. He said no. She said she could have sworn she left it on the counter. Then she asked, "Are you okay? You seem quiet lately." Tom looked at her, expression blank, just tired. And he was, but not in the way she meant. Not sleepy, not stressed. He was tired of pretending, tired of waking up every day next to a stranger wearing his wife's skin. So he smiled and said, "Maybe I'll take a drive later, clear my head." She watched his face carefully, no guilt, just relief. Like the idea of him being gone, even temporarily, made things easier. And that's when he knew. She wasn't wondering if he knew. She was just hoping he never would. The candle was an old one. Vanilla, slightly warped from years of sitting in a drawer. Tom lit it anyway. No fanfare, no dinner reservations, just a small flame and 2 plates of roast chicken, her favorite once. He set the table neatly, even folded the napkins into triangles. He poured her a glass of Pinot Grigio she used to love. No candles, she used to say, no ambiance. But he wanted a symbol, a timestamp. It was their anniversary, 32 years. When she came home, she didn't even glance at the candle, tossed her bag on the couch, kicked off her shoes and muttered, "My head's killing me." He didn't say a word, just nodded and followed her as she passed the kitchen without stopping, up the stairs and into the bedroom. The door closed softly. No kiss, no happy anniversary, not even a question about the scent wafting from the kitchen. Tom sat at the table for 15 minutes, long enough for the food to cool and the wine to lose its chill. Then he blew the candle out. He didn't eat. Instead, he cleared the table, washed every dish, and went to his study. He pulled out a yellow legal pad and began writing, not out of grief, but documentation, calm, precise dates, times, behavior shifts. A ledger of emotional decay. He wrote like a contractor filling out a damage report, because that's what it was. Structural damage, unseen, silent, and now irreparable. After 2 hours, he folded the pages neatly into an envelope and slid them into a small fireproof lockbox. Then he plugged in the flash drive, copied everything from his findings, bank statements, text logs, photos of statements she thought he never noticed, even a backup of her browsing history from the laptop he knew the password to. He labeled the drive with sharp, clean letters, "For my lawyer." At 1:12 a.m., he drove to the 24-hour bank downtown. He didn't speed, didn't tremble, just walked in, nodded at the overnight guard, and accessed his safety deposit box, the same one he hadn't touched since his father died. He placed a flash drive inside, closed the box, and locked it with a quiet click. No ceremony, no final look. The drive didn't represent revenge, not yet. It represented readiness. He wasn't going to lash out. He wasn't going to beg for answers. He was going to build something she wouldn't see until it was standing right in front of her, tall, cold, unshakable. When he came home, she was asleep, the bedside lamp still on, her book open, face down on the comforter like always. He turned the light off, stood there for a while, just watching her breathe. Then almost involuntarily, he whispered, "You really thought I wouldn't notice?" She didn't stir. He walked back downstairs and threw the candle in the trash. The next morning, he checked the calendar, circled the date in red, and underneath it he wrote 2 words, "Script begins." It was late, past midnight, and the house was steeped in the kind of silence that feels earned, not peaceful. Jenna had gone to bed early again, claiming sinus pressure this time. Tom stayed downstairs, fixing the old cabinet hinge she kept saying squeaked. It didn't. He knew that, but it gave him a reason to linger without being asked why. She left her laptop on the kitchen counter, screen still glowing, lid cracked just enough to invite curiosity, like a serpent under a rock. He stood over it, sipping lukewarm tea, telling himself not to look. But he did, because by now silence was no longer neutral. It was a lie wearing slippers. The email was already open. Her inbox wasn't password protected, an oversight from someone who clearly didn't consider him a threat or a man. Apparently, the thread subject was benign, project timeline adjustments, but the content wasn't. Tom wouldn't notice if I disappeared for a week. He's like wallpaper. No emojis, no LOLs, just casual cruelty dressed like workplace banter, the kind of line that would get a chuckle over happy hour martinis, and somehow that made it worse. Then the follow-up, "I owe you dinner next time. Last night meant more than I expected." He scrolled slowly. No naked photos, no graphic confessions, just the subtle shift of intimacy turned elsewhere. Private jokes, late-night timestamps, that awful mix of plausible deniability and emotional adultery. He didn't copy everything, just enough screenshots, emails saved as PDFs, and one damning calendar invite marked block time not available, recurring every other Thursday for the last 6 months. Always during the hours she claimed to be mentoring a new intern. When he finished, he closed each tab with surgical precision, logged out of her inbox, and lowered the screen slowly. No changes, no trace he'd been there, because Tom didn't want her to panic. Not yet. He wanted her comfortable. He leaned against the counter and stared into the darkness, the refrigerator humming in the background like a tired witness. Something inside him shifted then, not shattered, just slipped into another gear. He wasn't angry, not in the way movies make you expect. There was no impulse to scream, no urge to throw the laptop or storm into the bedroom demanding names. It was cleaner than that, colder. The betrayal was now an equation. It had data, it had timestamps, it had context, and it had consequences. The flicker of pain he felt, it was brief, like a nerve being cauterized. What came after was clarity. He rinsed his tea mug, dried it with the dish towel, and set it upside down like always. Then he took the USB drive from his study drawer, marked version 2, and added the new files. Back in the bedroom, she was snoring softly, her mouth slightly open, and curled over her phone. He looked at her like a man checking the final box on an inspection list and said under his breath, "You'll never see it coming." Then climbed into bed beside her, pulled the blanket up to his chest, and stared at the ceiling again. The woman lying next to Tom every night had no idea she was sleeping beside a man who had already buried their marriage, just hadn't told the funeral guests yet. It started at a branch office on a rainy Wednesday. Tom walked in wearing the same flannel he'd worn to fix drywall a decade ago. The teller asked if he needed assistance with standard account services. He said yes, and meant something very different. First, he removed her name from the joint savings account, quietly, legally, without fanfare. It wasn't about vengeance, it was about insulation. He didn't want a single cent of his pension, his savings, or the modest inheritance from his mother tied to a woman who thought he was wallpaper. The manager glanced at the request. "Would you like to notify the secondary account holder?" she asked, polite but curious. Tom smiled. Not yet. He moved on to the attorney's office to revise the will. Everything he'd spent a lifetime building, his grandfather's tools, the cabin up north, the vintage watch Jenna once called old man junk, all reassigned. Not to friends, not to Jenna, but to 2 charities, one for veterans, one for kids aging out of foster care. The same groups Jenna had once said were sad but not our responsibility. When the lawyer asked, "Would you like your spouse to receive notification of the changes?" Tom shook his head. "I'm just preparing, no announcements." Then came the insurance. He sat in a sterile office under fluorescent lights and calmly scratched out her name under beneficiary. He replaced it with the name of an old army buddy's son, someone who'd lost both parents in a car crash 2 years ago. Tom remembered how that boy had clung to him at the funeral, asking if adults ever feel safe again. "I hope this helps him feel something like it," Tom said to the insurance representative. At home, Jenna noticed nothing, not the slight shift in tone, not the tiny smile curling at the edges of Tom's lips when she brought up weekend plans. Plans he had no intention of joining. He still kissed her good morning, still handed her coffee, but now each act was surgical. He was no longer participating. He was documenting. He was building a runway for his exit. Each smile, each "have a good day" was rehearsed. A line from a man who knew the third act was coming and wanted her to walk right into it blindfolded. In the evenings, while she scrolled her phone in bed and giggled at texts she pretended weren't from someone else, Tom reviewed the separation documents. Clean, fair, no drama. Filed but unsigned, just waiting. He didn't fantasize about confrontation anymore. That would have given her too much credit. Instead, he visualized the moment she'd realize everything she'd leaned on. Her financial safety net, her image as the devoted wife, her assumed future with his assets, was already gone. She thought he was wallpaper, but wallpaper doesn't move the furniture while you sleep. Wallpaper doesn't strip the wiring out of the walls, and wallpaper sure as hell doesn't take the house down quietly. They were at a Sunday brunch Jenna had insisted on, hosted at a trendy little place with $16 eggs and servers who called everyone babe, the kind of place Jenna claimed she hated, too loud, too crowded, too fake. Yet she wore lipstick for it, real lipstick, not her usual gloss. Tom showed up in jeans and a plain navy shirt. Jenna gave him that half laugh she saved for things she thought she'd change one day. "You do know this place is dressy, right?" He shrugged. "I'm here, aren't I?" Her sister Colleen arrived late and already a little drunk. The mimosa glass had barely touched the table before she was refilling it, one of those women who thought she was sharp because she wore tortoiseshell frames and quoted podcasts nobody asked about. They made small talk, house repairs, her dog's surgery, the usual married people scripts. Until Colleen leaned in, glass wobbling slightly in her hand, and said loud enough for the table next to them to raise an eyebrow. "You two still playing house? I thought you'd be with Martin by now." And just like that, a pin dropped. Jenna froze for a half-second too long, covered it with a laugh that came out tight. "God, Colleen, what the hell?" Colleen waved it off. "Oh, come on, it's not like I'm spilling secrets. Everybody thought she hiccuped. "Whatever, forget it." Tom didn't forget it. He looked Colleen straight in the eye and smiled, calm, measured, not a twitch in the corners. Jenna quickly changed the subject to the omelets. Later that night, Jenna moved around the house like someone rearranging deck chairs on a sinking boat. She picked up laundry that didn't need folding, rearranged the fruit bowl, turned the porch light on even though no one was coming. And finally, standing by the dishwasher, she said, "Do you think I'm distant lately?" Tom dried his hands. No expression, no anger, just a slow turn of the head. "I think you're exactly where you want to be." And then he walked past her. She didn't follow. Upstairs, Tom stared at the ceiling again, his new routine. Only this time, he wasn't running scenarios. He was counting steps. Steps left, moves remaining. Colleen had handed him the missing puzzle piece without knowing it. The name Martin, the man behind the calendar, invites, the burner number, the dinner that meant more than expected. He didn't need a confrontation. What he needed was the right time. Jenna's side of the marriage was cracking, guilt disguised as nerves, distraction wrapped in fake affection. She kissed him longer that night, like a woman trying to measure sincerity she'd forgotten how to give. He kissed back, but only out of curiosity. It felt like pressing your lips to drywall. Nothing on the other side. Tom wasn't hurt anymore. He was armed. The email came on a Tuesday. Jenna was careful not to say much aloud, just a passing. "I'll be gone this weekend. Work thing, team building or something." She didn't look him in the eye when she said it, but she never really did anymore. Her suitcase was packed that night, lingerie he hadn't seen in months, a second pair of heels she didn't need for team building, and her best perfume, the one she only wore when she wanted to feel like the main character in someone else's fantasy. Tom nodded, said, "Have fun." She smiled too quickly, like someone who wasn't sure if she'd just been given permission or caught mid-lie. By Friday morning, the house was silent. Her scent lingered on the doorknob and in the hallway, but not for long. Tom stood in the center of the living room with a yellow legal pad and began checking items off a list he'd been building for 3 months. First, the safe. He emptied it. Birth certificates, tax documents, heirlooms from his parents all gone. Transferred to a secondary lockbox in a new bank under a trust she didn't even know existed. Next, the garage. Every tool, every drill bit, every wrench with a story, packed and labeled. It was more than just equipment. It was history, and he wasn't going to let her sell it for spite in some future fit of rage. Then the photos. Room by room, he took wide shots, documented furniture positions, decor choices, electronics. Each image saved 2 times, once on a flash drive, once in a secure cloud folder. Not for nostalgia, for court. If it came to it, if Jenna ever tried to cry foul or claim she didn't know what hit her, she would. People like her always do. By evening, he stood in the kitchen with 2 things left, her key card to the gym account he paid for, and the access fob to the HOA community center. He set both on the counter side by side, like returned rental items. Then he opened his study drawer and pulled out the folder he'd been assembling in pieces, labeled in all caps with sharp black ink, "Choice." Inside, the divorce papers, fully drafted, clean. No insults, no vengeance in the language, just facts, a division of assets that favored decency, not revenge, but not generosity either. On top of the papers, he placed a single sheet of paper, short, surgical. "You are free to choose how this ends, but know that I already have." Then finally, he walked through the house one last time, opened every door, turned off every light, looked at it not like a home but like a completed project, finished work, a job well done. He locked the front door and left, not forever, not yet. But when she walked in Sunday evening, everything would look the same until it didn't. The photos wouldn't be on the mantle, the tools would be gone, her access cards would be sitting in silence, and that folder would be on the dining table, waiting for her to realize the one thing she'd never considered, that he got to decide how the story ended. The front door creaked open just past 6 p.m. on Sunday. Jenna walked in with a carefully curated look of exhaustion, hair tousled just enough, sunglasses still on indoors, as if anyone cared. She kicked off her shoes by the entryway and called out, "Tom!" Silence. Good. He bought it. She headed to the kitchen, probably expecting leftovers or a note. Instead, she found nothing. No casserole dish, no idle post-it with "Hope Retreat went well" in his neat print. Just the strange stillness of a house that had been emptied of intent. She dropped her overnight bag near the stairs, frowning, and then she saw it. At the top of the staircase, sitting neatly on the bed they'd shared for 3 decades, was her diary. Open, spine cracked precisely where it shouldn't be. That line, "I don't feel anything for him, not hate, not love, just nothing." There it was, her own handwriting staring back at her like a mirror she couldn't look away from. And directly on top of it, like a silent verdict, lay Tom's wedding ring. No fanfare, no drama, just a cold final truth. Next to it, a folder, thick, heavy, labeled in calm, all caps ink, choice. And stuck to the front, a single yellow post-it. Read it 2 times, then call your lawyer. She screamed. Not like in the movies, not a sob, not a plea, just a raw, panicked animal sound. A realization collapsing in real time. She flipped through the folder, her hands trembling. Divorce paperwork, precise, signed on his end. Bank records, statements, screenshots, photos, evidence layered like geological strata. She whispered no, 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 over and over, as if repetition could rewind time. She grabbed her phone, dialed his number straight to voicemail, tried again and again. She ran to the kitchen, checked the fridge. Nothing, not even condiments. She opened the garage, his tools gone. The office cleared out. Her hand shook so violently she knocked a vase from the hallway table. It shattered. She didn't even flinch. Jenna ran upstairs as if some part of her brain thought he might be hiding in the closet waiting to yell, "Gotcha!" But the house was empty. Only then did she sit on the edge of the bed, that open diary still mocking her. She stared at the sentence she wrote weeks ago, maybe longer, back when she thought he'd never look, that he was too quiet, too dull, too safe. She'd mistaken his silence for absence. But silence like that, it has weight, and now it sat on her chest like a boulder. Tom had read her most private words and didn't fight. He didn't cry, he acted, and in doing so, became someone she no longer had access to. She curled forward, eyes wild, fingers gripping the ring like it was still warm. But it was cold, final. And the worst part, she knew deep down this was no bluff. He hadn't left in a moment of rage. He had planned his exit like a man who builds bridges and then burns the blueprints. Her first instinct was damage control. She grabbed her phone and scrolled furiously through contacts, calling one of Tom's oldest friends, Paul, the one who'd been best man at their wedding and godfather to a niece they never had. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. A third time it didn't even ring. Next was David, their neighbor for 20 years, the one who helped Tom install their back deck. Same result. Then Pete. Then Tony. Nothing. Silence like a funeral reception. She texted her sister Colleen. "Call me. Urgent, please." No reply. She tried her parents. Her mother answered on the second ring, which gave Jenna a half a second of false hope until her mom spoke. Cold. Formal. "We received a letter. I don't think there's anything left to talk about." Jenna blinked. "Wait, what? What letter, from who?" "You know who," her mother said, then hung up. It was like someone had poured ice water directly into her spine. She stood in the living room, heart pounding, stomach twisting, trying to make sense of the invisible wall that had risen between her and everyone. She opened the folder again, flipping to the back, and there it was. A copy of the letter dated a week ago, addressed personally to each person who mattered. Neighbors, friends, her own parents, even the priest they occasionally saw on holidays. The language was flawless. No bitterness, no blame, just truth. "You may be hearing things soon from Jenna. Before that happens, I wanted you to know the facts directly from me." It listed no accusations, just attached evidence, gentle, devastating evidence, screenshots, dates, quotes, the diary line, the calendar invites, the bank records. And then this line, "This isn't a smear campaign. This is context. So when she comes to you looking for sympathy, you'll understand why I stepped away without spectacle." It was surgical. She called Colleen again. Voicemail. Tried texting her mother. Message undelivered. Instagram. Blocked. The silence wasn't just silence. It was organized. Strategic. Tom hadn't just left the marriage. He'd taken her exit plan, her alibi, and her future support system, and dismantled it piece by piece before she even noticed. In the span of one afternoon, Jenna went from a woman navigating a midlife transition to a woman whose husband calmly exposed her duplicity to everyone who'd ever sent them a Christmas card. And now, no one was picking up. Even her own reflection in the hallway mirror seemed to avoid eye contact. She wasn't just losing a husband, she was losing witnesses. Because Tom hadn't screamed, he'd simply turned on the lights and let her fall apart in front of the very people she thought she could run to. The cafe was neutral ground. One of those nondescript places tucked between a dental office and a florist. Intentionally boring. No memories there, no chance of nostalgia creeping in. Just tile floors, weak coffee, and the faint scent of lemon disinfectant. Exactly what Tom wanted. He arrived first, sat at the corner table facing the entrance, and laid a manila envelope beside his coffee cup. No emotion, no nerves, just posture straight, calm, unshakable. Jenna walked in 10 minutes late. She wore foundation that didn't quite hide the stress beneath her eyes. Her lips were glossed, her blouse carefully unbuttoned, just one button more than usual. Intentional vulnerability. She looked like someone rehearsing sincerity. Tom saw the effort. He saw everything now. She sat down across from him and immediately started speaking in a voice designed to sound broken, but still graceful. I've had time to reflect on what I wrote. I didn't mean it like that. I was angry. I felt invisible, but I was wrong. Tom didn't flinch. She went on, talked about therapy, about how things could be different. She used phrases like reconnect emotionally and rebuild trust, and maybe we both made mistakes. Tom sipped his coffee. Then he reached into the envelope and pulled out a single page, the signed divorce papers. Clean, crisp, no revisions, just his name, scrolled with the same steady hand he used when sketching blueprints. He placed it gently in front of her. I didn't leave because of what you wrote, he said, eyes locked on hers. I left because you meant it. Her mouth opened, but he continued before she could speak. You thought you could write something like that, hide it in ink, and I'd never notice, but I did. And what I realized is you stopped being my wife long before I stopped being your husband. Tears welled, real or not, you didn't care anymore. You don't get to erase me in your journal and then rewrite me in your apology. She reached across the table, fingers trembling. Tom, please, I know I hurt you. He stood. The scrape of the chair against the tile was louder than her voice. I hope you find whatever it is you were looking for, he said, but I'm not it anymore. He turned, walked away. No hug, no dramatic exit line, just the sound of a man who'd already left long before his feet moved. And then the softest punctuation of all, the click of the cafe door closing behind him. She sat there alone, hands on the table, staring at the space where his coffee cup used to be. The tears finally fell, but not for him, for the life she thought would always be waiting.